Well, it happened. It's finally passed. The $1 trillion infrastructure bill is on its way. The Build Back Better bill, bipartisan infrastructure bill, is going to impact our entire country. But what's in it for us? What's in it for the Commonwealth? What's in it for the Black community? This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you for joining us on this beautiful Sunday here in Hampton Roads, and all of you that are listening all across the United States and outside the country on this November 14th here in 2021. That's right. We're at the end. You know, who would have thought that we would have got here with all that was going on, but we are here at the end of the year, and it is a phenomenal year that we're having here at the Norfolk State University, where we're broadcasting on the campus here in Norfolk, Virginia, on WNSB FM. This the new sound of Hot 91, the soul of VA. Also, I'd like to thank all of the alumni, all of the Spartan Nation, all of the students, faculty, administrators, stakeholders, those that love this university, this institution, that make it what it is. So, listen, I want to get right into it. For those of you that joined us in the month of October, we went through our conversation with the candidate series, the election overview, the day of election. It's over. We've got our new administration in, and now it's time to get down to work. So we're switching our gears over to what I call, in the month of November, is our What's in It series. In the month of November, we're going to break down and really delve into some very important generational and life-changing legislation that applies to all of us. And we're going to peel back the covers. That's what we do here on State of Water, where we bring movers, shakers, policymakers to you to discuss issues that are important to the community. And we're going to peel back those layers and really dissect what's in this important legislation. So there's nothing more important right now than the bipartisan infrastructure bill that just passed in Congress. That's right. Build Back Better. It's the Biden Build Back Better infrastructure bill. So say that 5 times if you can. You know, it's a bill that was on the table for a while. Many people believe that a lot of the infighting that took place during this time period probably dealt a blow to the decrease in popularity of President Biden, who's at a current low. He's at less than 40% if you look at certain polls. Not only that, but they believe that this infighting dealt a blow to the red wave that we saw come through the Commonwealth, and also affect other elections as well. But keep in mind, it didn't affect all elections. I mean, we elected a lot of firsts, persons of color, African Americans, women, Asian Americans to office, to head cities, being heads of mayors, and also of our state government. So we don't want to overdo the red wave, but it is significant, right? And what we see is that this legislation, there was a lot of infighting in front of the camera, a lot of infighting, you know, where people could see it, as opposed to going into the back rooms and hashing it out, negotiating how Washington really works. You know, we don't want to see how the sausage is made, but we just like it, even those of you that eat vegan sausage, right? So you don't want to see how it's made, but you definitely want to look at the end result. And this was the end result. The passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, over $1 trillion that's going to be injected into our local and state governments so that we can build back better. Roads, transit, internet. This is the bill that a lot of persons are really comparing to what FDR did, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, during the time of course, we know the Great Depression, coming out of the Great Depression. He implemented a lot of bills to really get the country back going. A lot of people look at this as possibly legislation such as the Hoover Dam that moved and created tons of jobs. But this is not just, I think, the bills of FDR or the time where we built the Hoover Dam, but I think it's a combination of both of those and more. There's a lot of money in here. Listen, I remember we were talking about millions of dollars, then hundreds of millions of dollars, and then billions, right? It's like, oh, who's going to pay this money back? We're talking $1 trillion. And that's after $46 trillion was actually pumped in during the time of what we call the CARES Act. The Coronavirus Rescue Act that helped to keep the country and the world from going into just bottoming out because of COVID-19. And again, once again, COVID-19, we are not just getting through this, but we're coming through it. And we're coming through because of ingenuity, because of vaccines, because of research, because of the investment made in our infrastructures, our intellectual infrastructure, our medical infrastructure, and our infrastructure in order to get information, vital information, testing, vaccinations, information, good information, solid information, scientific information to the public to make sure that we continue to move forward. So that type of investment is what we see that's happening now, right? So let's go through it. Let's break it down. In the first half hour, what we're going to do, we're going to break down what's in it. We're going to take a look at it, and then we're going to talk a little bit about also, what it took to get here. All right, so we're going to get there. We got to deal with what it took to get here. But in the second half hour, we're going to break it down and see how it's going to impact us here in the Commonwealth, what's in it for us in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And then toward the end of the second half, we're going to talk about what do we see moving forward, right? How we can just continue to build back better, continue to invest before the crumble, and talk about what's good for us as Virginians, as Americans, as citizens of this world. So let's get into it. We've got Marvin Folks here, also known as DJ Scandalous. You can hear him on the air Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. here on WNSB Hot 91, the new sound of VA. He's our producer here. So we talk about these things all the time. And it's amazing to see how we say, hey, we need more, we need another tunnel, another bridge to stop congestion. We need a wider interstate. And if you travel across the bridge, HRBT, it's another tunnel coming, another bridge tunnel. If you travel from the peninsula up to Richmond, you'll see the expansion of the 3-lane interstate, right? That's the investment that's being made to help us get from one place to the other more efficiently. So let's look at the $1 trillion plan that now goes to President, that is going to President Biden for the signing. And this is from the AP News. I'm reading this article from AP News. It's an article that came out November 6th, and it really breaks it down after the passage of it. Let's take a look at it. So this money goes into law for roads, bridges, ports, rail transit, safe water, power grid, broadband internet, and much more. So when we talk about infrastructure, a lot of times we forget about ports, right? Keep in mind, for those of us who are ordering gifts for getting gifts ready for Christmas, better get them early because there is that's right, there's a backlog, right? In some of our ports, our main ports here, we have a major port here in Hampton Roads. We got major port in Miami, major port New Orleans, major port up in the East Coast, further up on the East Coast, major port in L.A., major port in the Bay Area, major port Washington State. these are where goods come into our country from all around the world. But there is a stalemate. There's a glut of goods that are just sitting on the water because we can't download them. We don't have the capacity to get them in. Or also, we don't have the capacity of workers as well. So here's what happens. We're investing in those and investing in not just getting the freight there, but taking the freight off the ships and from the ships, the transit area, into the roads, onto the roads, all the way toward to our local places where we purchase these items, right? That's infrastructure. So we don't think about that, but that's very important. Also, broadband internet. That's infrastructure. But look, we all experienced COVID. We all experienced being at home. We all experienced learning from home. Look, I remember there was a great debate about online education, whether it was as superior to, in-person education. Well, from Harvard all the way down to the house, we were in Zoom University, right? Right? Yeah. So now that debate is settled, right? We're only going to build from that. So we said, listen, we're not going back. We're going forward, By the way, for those that invested in Zoom, that was bringing in, I think at the time, $60 million revenue before COVID. They're bringing in $600 million revenue. So if you had stock in Zoom, that's right. That was a good bet. But that was a good investment, not a bet. And keep in mind, we do not give financial advice on this show. Just a disclaimer. But let's delve into it a little bit more. So, again, it's a law that was historic. We're looking at investment compared to the building the Transcontinental Railroad and the interstate highway system. Here's what the White House is projecting. The White House is projecting the investment will add on average about 2 million jobs per year over a decade. So, of course, that's a very large number. So we're talking about 20 million jobs, right, over 10 years. The question becomes, how many of those jobs are permanent? How many of those jobs will actually materialize? And how many of those jobs are actually living wage type jobs? And how many of those jobs will actually continue on after this time period? However you cut it, however you slice it, however you fold it, however you look at it, 2 million jobs over a 10-year, over a decade projected is a lot of jobs. That means if you want to work, you can. And not only that, but there's a lot of great opportunities for skilled workers, for individuals to come out and be able to work. Now, this particular bill, well, we're going to get into the bipartisan piece. We'll look at that on the second half. All right, so let's just deal right now, Marvin. Let's break down the bill. So here's what's in it. Roads and bridges. All right, according to the AP News, Associated Press, by the way, the bill would provide $110 billion to repair the nation's aging highways, bridges, and roads. Also, according to the White House, 173,000 total miles and nearly 280,000 kilometers of America's highways and major roads and 45,000 bridges are in poor condition. Now, you guys know here in our beloved Hampton roads, we drive across bridges every day. If you want to travel to the store, you got to go across a bridge. There's water there. It's one of the great things about our area. The waterways and road runs everywhere. We can see the age in our bridges. We can see the age in them. But help is on the way. Also, almost $40 billion for bridges is the single largest dedicated bridge investment since, guess what? According to the AP, the construction of the national highway system. $110 billion. That's over 1/10 of $1 trillion that's going into roads and bridges. Absolutely phenomenal. You cannot go against that type of investment because, look, we all drive across. I don't care if you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're old, you're young, you're independent, you're poor, you're rich, you work construction, or you're being chauffeured. You got to go across roads, highways, and bridges. And in Hampton roads, yes, tunnels. So that's a phenomenal investment. I think all of us can really cheer about that. Let's take a look at public transit. So the $39 billion for public transit in legislation would expand transportation systems, improve accessibility for people with disabilities, and provide dollars to state and local governments to buy, guess what? Zero emissions and low emission buses. So the Transportation Department estimates that the current repair backlog is more than 24,000 buses, 5,000 rail cars, 200 stations, and thousands of miles of track and power systems. Again, $39 billion for public transit for our public transportation systems. So again, for those, now of course, there are a lot of us that do rely upon public transit, buses and so forth. A lot of us that do not. But in larger metropolitan cities, and for us that travel up and down the East Coast, and even if you're on the West Coast, you're traveling using a lot of railways, that's huge. If you're in the Midwest and you're using if you've ever been to places like Chicago and you've ridden the train on top, that is a huge investment, an absolutely huge investment. And it's an exciting investment because now we have an opportunity to modernize. We have an opportunity to repair. We have an opportunity to invest in the future and the expansion of it. So this is huge for public transit. Also, let's take a look at passenger freight and freight rail. So Amtrak. Amtrak is the major train operator for our major freight rail and passenger rail. All right. So to reduce Amtrak's maintenance backlog, according to AP, which has worsened since Superstorm Sandy 9 years ago. A lot of us remember Superstorm Sandy, that hit less than a decade ago. This bill will provide $66 billion to improve the rail service of Northeast Corridor. Now, personally, I ride and frequent the Northeast Corridor. If you take Amtrak here in the Hampton Roads area, you're on the Northeast Corridor. So this benefits us. 457 miles, 457 miles of public transit for highways. For Amtrak and also other routes. $80 billion. Now they said this is less than $80 billion that Biden, who rode Amtrak from Delaware to Washington during this time, what he asked for. But this is still the largest investment in passenger rail since Amtrak was founded 50 years ago. That's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. All right, electric vehicles. Let's get to, well, before we get to electric vehicles, I want to get to airports. And then I want to go to what I call the modernization of transportation. We're going to look at electric vehicles, internet access, water, modernizing the electric grid, and then we're going to look at life-sustaining infrastructure investment. We're going to look at water. And we're going to go back and take a look at some of the terrible, what I believe, one of the major atrocities of our country, and that's the lead water unfortunate event in Flint, Michigan, which we see, which we'll talk about, is in a lot of areas, right? So let's look at airports. Now, right now, if you're looking at the news or if you've flown recently, I've flown recently since COVID, and, first of all, airports before COVID, I'm telling you, it was a journey, right? It was something, that's why I like regional airports. That's why I like small airports. But the large airports, huge operations. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's absolutely amazing that just a short time after really the first flight, right? Wright brothers, right below us in our neighbors, North Carolina, that we can literally say, hey, I think I want to go to Hawaii today. You can literally hop on a plane and get there. Or, hey, I want to visit somebody across in Charlotte, Atlanta, whatever. We can hop on a plane and get there. To me, that's amazing. And we have thousands of flights every day, and the safety of the flights, I mean, just it's amazing. And every time I'm in the air, I just marvel. I was like, this is a piece of sheet metal in the air, but it's phenomenal. So I wanted to point that out. But let's take a look at the airports. This bill would spend $25 billion to improve runways, gates, taxiways at airports, and improve the terminals. It would also improve the aging air traffic control towers. By the way, there are certain careers, certain jobs that are seeing a massive retirement boom because of the baby boomers, right? Air traffic controllers is one of those. It's a phenomenal career. It's very important. It's something that we have to do, all right? Have to keep safe. And it's something that I believe that if you're looking for a new career, exciting career in aviation, you can do. Now, that is a huge investment, just as important as our roads, highways, and bridges and tunnels. The investment in our airports is a tremendous investment. So, with that being the case, those are our traditional modes of transportation. Let's take a look at modernizing. The modernizing of our infrastructure. Electric vehicles. Now, we bought a hybrid in our family. Our kids drive it. And we saw that as being the future, right? Ford Motor Company is investing, and they really pioneered this hybrid. They're investing now in electric vehicles, and they're pushing. We know Tesla. They're also pushing electric vehicles. That's what they're built on. Now, this bill would spend $7.5 billion. That's what it'd be for electric vehicle car charging stations, which the administration says are critical to accelerating the use of electric vehicles to curb climate change. It will also provide $5 billion for the purchase of electric school buses and hybrids, reducing reliance on school buses that run on diesel fuel. That's right, Marvin. It's economical. It helps the climate, okay? Just imagine every school bus is now that burns diesel is taken off of the road, and now it's replaced with electric vehicles with zero emissions. That's a game changer for our climate. That shows responsibility. That shows that we're trying to do our very best to reverse the damage that we did to future generations coming behind us. So that is massive. It's also a great opportunity for our municipalities to invest in new equipment for our children, because our greatest asset in every single community are our children. That's right. They're our children. Let's also take a look at modernizing the electric grid. So to protect against the power outages that have become more frequent in years, according to the AP, this bill would spend $65 billion to improve the reliability and resiliency of the power grid. It would also boost, according to the AP, carbon capture technologies and more environmentally friendly electricity sources like clean hydrogen. Now, carbon capture, that's very new technology as it relates to it actually being impactful, but it is technology that has worked on smaller scale. So it increases that ability. But not only that, when we talk about power outages, modernize our power grids, especially against cyber attacks, is very key. We do everything on our phones. Everything's in the cloud. I have no idea what the cloud is, but it's in the cloud. If you have an Apple product, it's a storage unit in the cloud, but it's there. And being able to modernize our grid, being able to modernize all these things that our lives depend upon. Now, can you imagine living without electricity for a day? I mean, we've done it. Yeah, Marvin's like it's the worst. When the wind kicks up or we have a major storm. Yeah, can we imagine living without 2 days? We've done it. Well, it gets worse. 3 days. Everybody's sharing their things, but then after about 3 days, the neighbors disappear. Right? Everybody kind of goes in and counts everything they have. After about a week, 2 weeks, it's almost unfathomable how it could be. And if it's hot or if it's extreme cold, it's even worse. So this is a great investment in what we need to live, right? Let's also take a look at internet access. Legislation, according to the AP, $65 billion for broadband access would aim to improve the internet services for rural areas, low-income families, tribal communities, and a lot of this money, most of it, will be made available through grants to states. So that's key, because now it's not just monies that are made available, which a lot of these pieces of improvement are going to be created, and businesses, private companies are going to have to take part in helping to get this done. But through here, it's a granting process to our state. So there's a different allocation of those dollars, and that's key. So that's phenomenal. And again, as I mentioned before, this is important because all of us were on Zoom University. All of us were Zoom kids. We had Zoom kids, K through 12. So this is key. Also, waterways. Now, let's take a quick look at what I talked about earlier, what I thought was one of the major atrocities of our time, and that was the water infrastructure in our communities. This legislation would spend $55 billion on water, wastewater infrastructure. What will it do? $15 billion to replace lead pipes, $10 billion to address water contamination from various substances, chemicals that were used in the production of Teflon, and that are being used in firefighting foam, water-repellent clothing, and many other items. We know that material, we've had an issue with that here in the Hampton Roads area. Of course, lead pipes are all over the country still. Some communities still have clay pipes. That's right. So this will replace all of that and ensure that Flint, Michigan will not happen again. Great investment. And then paying for it. That's the key. It's a lot of money. How are we going to pay for it? So there's a 5-year spending package that will be paid by tapping $210 billion in our spent COVID-19 relief aid. So either the trillions of dollars that were spent for COVID, we're going to tap into 210 that hasn't been spent, and $53 billion in unemployment insurance aid some states have halted. So unemployment, that state said, no more. Let's get back to work. We're using that money to help pay for this, along with an array of smaller pots of money like petroleum reserve sales and spectrum of auction for 5G services. So there you have it. That's what's in the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. Great investment for our country. Now we're going to, in the second half hour, we're going to talk about what does it mean for the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. You're listening to our What's in It series, where we break down to find out what's in our infrastructure bill. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you again for joining us here on this beautiful Sunday here in Hampton Roads on November 14th in 2021. And for all of you, again, who are joining us all across the country and outside of the country, they're listening us to our app. You can listen to it and stream us on WNSBonline.org. That's WNSBonline.org. In this series, in the month of November, we're talking about the What's in It series, right? So we're looking at what's in it. What's in our these very important generational changing bills, right? So we got Marvin Folks here, also known as DJ Scandalous. You can listen to him every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. He's our producer here. And, we had a chance during the time of our break to really talk about very briefly the impact. He was like, this is great, but what's the impact here in Virginia? What does this $1 trillion mean for us here in the Commonwealth? Well, let's take a look at it. In the first half hour, we delved into looking at how the monies for this bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill is going to be divvied up. And we also looked at how it's going to be paid for, very efficiently. But in the second half hour, we're going to take a look at what does it mean for individuals here in the Commonwealth, but not just the Commonwealth. But we're also going to take a look at what it means for our community and how did we get here? All right, how do we get here? So before we do that, let's take a look at how did we get here. I wanted to say that for last. I didn't really want to get into the politics of it, how the sausage was made, but I really want to think about the excitement of what this bill is going to do. But let's look at how this sausage was made. So, on Friday night of last week, a bipartisan bill, and when I say last week, week before last, it was after the Tuesday election, the red wave that came through the Commonwealth of Virginia. The House passed a bipartisan plan, and President Biden said Saturday he was going to hold the signing ceremony so the lawmakers return for a week's recess. All that happened, okay? Now, how did that happen, though? So this bill is not something that just came up overnight. They've been waiting on this. But there was an infighting, right? There was infighting because there were some. Now, keep in mind, Democrats control, for the most part, both House and the presidency. Though by slim margins, they still control by name. However, in the House, you had what's called progressive Democrats, 6 that did not vote for this bill. And they're all part of what's known as the squad. These are new legislators that came in saying that we have a quote-unquote progressive agenda where we want to take care of our community more so and invest in them. Because a lot of times, a lot of policy is created where the community is left out. So those 6 legislators actually did not vote for the bill. And then, of course, in the Senate, it passed before, came up to the House, they said they wouldn't support it. However, we did have a crossover of Republicans that actually voted for this particular bill. The bill cleared the House at 228 yeas and 206 nays. And this ended weeks of what we call intra-party. Again, we're looking at AP News report, intra-party negotiations in which the liberal Democrats insisted the legislation be tied to the larger $1.75 trillion social spending bill in an effort to press more moderate Democrats to support both. Now, we're going to talk about what's in the 1.75 proposed tax and spending social safety net next week. That's our other part of our What's in It series. And then after that, we're going to talk about climate change, the COP 26, the climate change, the Paris Agreement. We're going to talk about what's in those proposals. But that was where the split was. But this was so important because they had the support to get it done that not only did the other Democrats support it that are not part of what's called the liberal Democrats of the squad, but also you have Republicans crossover in the House and vote for this bill because how it would impact their states and impact their communities. We're talking major dollars here, billions of dollars. In the previous half hour, we talked about over 20 million jobs. We're right at 20 million. 2 million per year, the White House estimates. That's, again, a large estimate, but we do know that we need a lot of manpower to get out there and work to ensure that the roads, the bridges, the broadband, internet access, the airports, the waterways, our water systems, all of that is basically brought up to par. That we're modernizing our system. Also, the Senate passed the legislation all the way back in August, 69 to 30. So with those rare bipartisan negotiations, according to AP, the House kept that compromise intact, 13 House Republicans voted for the bill, giving the Democrats more than enough votes to overcome the handful of defections from progressives. So even though we had 6 Democrats that deflected, we had 13 Republicans that said, we're going to vote for it, more than enough, let's get it done. It's done. We're now building back better. So it's the Biden's Build Back Better bill. I'll say that 5 times, it's a little tongue twister, but but no matter how you say it, Marvin, it's done. So it's on its way. So what does it mean for the Commonwealth of Virginia? So I'm going to WHS, Harrisburg, Virginia, WHSV Channel 3, their publication that came out November 6th as well. So both of these publications are updated on the 7th. So both the AP and this publication, looking at the 6th with an update on the 7th for this one, how the newly passed infrastructure bill will impact Virginia. So let's take a look at it. Now, keep in mind the bill is $1.2 trillion. With that, largest investment toward improving roads, bridges, and broadband internet in decades. We know that. But in this provision, according to the bill, the Commonwealth is expected to receive a large amount of investment in our airports, public transportation, and protecting the state from climate change. So let's break it down. Virginia should receive $7 billion for federal aid highway apportion programs and $537 million for bridge replacement repairs. Over the next 5 years, the Commonwealth should also receive millions to build a network of chargers across the state for electric vehicles. I want to say that again. The Commonwealth of Virginia will receive $7 billion for federal aid and highway apportion program and $537 trillion for bridge replacement and repairs. That is huge. I want to start to break this down once again. When we talk about $7 billion, when we talk about investment in the apportionment, of course, it's going to be apportioned, so that means that a certain portion comes to various programs that we have across the Commonwealth, right? So that means you're not going to have all monies in Northern Virginia, all monies in Hampton Roads, all in Richmond, all in Southwest, and so forth. It's going to be apportioned out, okay? But for that, that is a major investment in our highways and roads that we have now. Now, for those of you that drive through Hampton Roads, you know that, we have some issues like a lot of communities, with the health of our roads, the width of our highways, the health of it. But we also see the improvements. If you're driving from the peninsula all the way up to Richmond, you see the expansion of 3-lane interstate. Now, of course, we're still expanding, but that is tremendous. No more do you have 2 lanes on I-64, and it's going to continue to expand until we get 3 lanes all the way, right? And then who knows, maybe in our children's generation, we'll get 4 lanes across. Or maybe we get a high-speed rail in the middle, right? That'll be a great thing. That's a great idea. We'll see what happens, Marvin. But that is a major investment in how we travel across the Commonwealth. So of that $1.2 trillion, the Commonwealth is going to get $7 billion for our roads. And that comes out of the $110 million that's apportioned for roads, highways. So if you break it down, of that $110 million, we get $7 million. That's $102 million left for the rest of the 49 states, right? That is huge. And, of course, the district. So that's huge for us. So that shows that our legislators are fighting on our behalf. And not just that, but let's go to bridge replacement, okay? Let's break it down. Bridge replacement and repairs, $537 million. $537 million on bridge replacement. And that is huge. That's exactly, Marvin. That's a better way to put it. It's $500 million. So let's just say $7.5 billion out of 110 billion. Again, that we talk about our bridges, when we talk about the things that we have, the roads that we travel across, that's major. And when we talk about the health of Hampton Roads, the main arteries, those are the bridges, the tunnels that we go back around. We go back and forth through. And that's important because of the military. The area with the largest military installation across the country, home of the largest naval base in the world, that's huge. Home of one of the largest, if not the largest, shipbuilding units here in our backyard. And also one of the largest and busiest ports that we have here in our backyard. That is huge investment for what we do here in the Commonwealth. Now, I want to talk about these charging stations. Now, we talked about the modernization of our infrastructure, right? We talked about earlier in the first half hour the monies that are allocated for electric vehicles, electric across the board, municipalities, school buses, and the like. And I also mentioned, not part of the bill, but even car companies. Tesla, of course, came out as full electric, but Ford actually pioneered the hybrid. And they also are now pioneering electric vehicles. Now, it's no coincidence. These things are connected, right? And that's what happens, to make sure that not just we're growing as one community, but we're growing as a nation. So these charging stations, if you start to go to your stores, we see charging stations everywhere, right? We see charging stations here. We see charging stations at this local eatery. We see charging stations. Look, I believe we're going to see charging stations every single where we park our vehicles on the main roads, in your parking meter. No more do you put coins in it, but you now hit a button or you do it on your app. Well, guess what? You're going to be able to plug in pretty soon. That's going to happen because we are modernizing this. And not just us, but we look at China. China is also modernizing, and they're banking on electric vehicles over there as well. So a lot of major opportunities, but that's going to be over the next 5 years, right? The next 5 years. But let's move past the roads, the highways, the bridges, and the replacement of those, and the electric chargers. Abigail Spanberger, Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Part of the reason she said she supported, according to this article, this bill is because of the internet connectivity. That was her top priority, with $100 million being allocated to help provide broadband coverage. I'm going to repeat that again. Internet connectivity, $100 million connected. Well, maybe my call won't drop in certain places when I hit certain interstates, right? I don't know if you guys experience that, but I experience that all the time. There's one place that I travel on the interstate every day. It's a little choppy, and sometimes it just drops. But this $100 million investment is not only going to do great things for our connectivity on our phones, but also for our homes. This is where it helps our communities, low-income communities, Black communities. This is where funds in this particular bill is going to impact, giving access, broadband access and internet access to us in our homes where we had bad connectivity during the time of COVID, our rural communities where we did not have a lot of good access. All of us, we were in Zoom University, not just Zoom University, but K through 12 classes, the whole nine. All these things took place during the time period where we had an opportunity to get it right. And with this particular investment, this bill, we are taking steps to actually get it right. Now, how long would this take in order to get, to our communities? It's going to take about, according to President Biden, we'll see about the effects of this bill in the next 2 to 3 months. as he says, to get shovels in the ground and people being able to go and do things, following things move with the bill, and it's paid out over years. So we're talking 2 to 3 months, this is happening. 2 to 3 months, this is taking place. 2 to 3 months, this is the major piece to move our country forward. You're listening to Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We are here on WNSB FM on the campus of the Norfolk State University. It's the new sound of Hot 91, the soul of VA. We're breaking it down. You're listening to the What's in It series, where the entire month of November, we're taking what we call generational changing legislation and breaking it down and peeling back these very important provisions and asking ourselves not just what's in it, but also what does it mean for our community? What does it mean for our Commonwealth? What does it mean for our children? What does it mean for our future? In the first half hour, we broke down and took a look at the bill itself, and we went through and we saw where this $1.2 trillion we broke it down, how it's allocated for various areas such as roads and bridges with $110 billion, public transit, $39 million, passenger and freight rail, $66 billion, also electric vehicles, $7.5 billion, internet access, $65 billion, also modernizing our electric grid, $65 billion, airports, $25 billion, water and wastewater, $55 billion, and paying for it. How do we pay for it? We're paying for it, again, smart spending, utilizing COVID relief funds that haven't been spent. Now, think about it. We got $210 billion, Marvin. That's a lot of money. That's almost $250 billion that we haven't spent. You know, I kind of feel like Bruce's Millions here. You know, the classic movie, Richard Pryor, right, where he had to spend all that money. And if he couldn't spend it, he would lose it. But we're able to spend it, and we're able to spend it in a smart way and recycling those funds that are already allocated and put it toward this infrastructure bill. And not only that, but also $53 billion in unemployment benefits that states halted and stopped. Now, I do have some trepidation there. I have some trepidation as it relates to unemployment benefits. These unemployment benefits, a lot of people needed those benefits. A lot of people benefited from those benefits because the country shut down because of COVID-19. A lot of people were able to get ahead. A lot of people were able to catch up. A lot of people were able to keep themselves from being evicted. A lot of people were on the edge. A lot of businesses were on the edge. And COVID, as terrible as it was, because of smart legislation that was created by our legislators in Washington, absolutely. Absolutely, Marvin. Created there in Washington, and a lot of our Virginia legislators helped to create, had a hand in creating this smart legislation. And I don't think enough is said about our legislators, our congresspersons, and especially our U.S. senators that really work on the behalf of the people in the Commonwealth. We've got phenomenal legislators in the House, in the Senate, in Washington doing phenomenal things. Absolutely phenomenal things. What I call smart policy, good common sense public policy that's good for the people, good for the common good. All right? They're working toward it. And that money was created to help people, and it did help people itself. And in doing that, it was a great opportunity for people to, again, move forward, again, to get ahead and do great things. Now, again, for those states that halted it, you know, those are local issues affecting local people doing these things, right? So the other part of it is smaller pots of money, but we're also looking at petroleum reserve sales. Again, that's selling our oil sales and that we have in reserves, and spectrum auction for 5G services. But what do we now see this? How does it impact? in the last part of this piece, I want to talk about how does this impact our future generation? How does this impact us? What do we need to do, Marvin, to really move this forward so we get here? We don't have to get to a point where we got to shut down the country to say, hey, we got to do this now, right? In order to see that we have to do the right thing. Well, how do we now have foresight or actually just open our eyes and say, hey, I see bridges crumbling across the country. We got D's and C's on our bridges report card, and sometimes F's. And we need to make a move very quickly. And not only that, but not just a move, but also climate change. How is that impacting us moving forward? How is climate change really, really impacting us? A lot of these investments are really looking forward at what we see our world being in the future. And that's cleaner, that's safer, and that's something that we can pass on to our future generations. We talked about it before. We looked at the game changer. Monies to actually take off all of these diesel burning buses, school buses, off the road. And in taking this off, we're able to take that pollution out of the air. That's huge. That is major. So now we're creating this, and we're creating electric vehicles with literally zero emissions. Now, of course, we have the manufacturing of these vehicles. We have the maintenance of these vehicles. We have the batteries with these vehicles are going to run on, the disposal of the batteries and so forth. So there's still an impact on the environment, right? But for the most part, we're taking out a large impact, a deadly impact upon our world, upon our community, as it relates to making sure that our community is safe. Not only that, but I want to go back to the water crisis. All right, how does this impact in our communities? A lot of times, Marvin, in our communities, the black and brown communities, low-income communities, we're affected by what's environmental injustice, environmental racism. Call it what you want. Our communities have been impacted negatively because of that. Now that's a major issue. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you again for joining us on this Sunday. And if you miss any shows, you can go to our social media and check it out. We'll see you next week. God bless.